Looks like we're live. Hello everyone and welcome to yet another recreational programming session with Mr. Azuzin. Hello, welcome Kolubenka, hello. Right, so let's do a little bit of announcement. How do I type? Forgot how to type. Red Circle, live on Twitch. And what are we doing today on Twitch at .television website? Today we're continue developing Musializer, right? So I'm gonna give the link to where we're doing all of that, twitch.tv/tsodin, and I'm gonna ping everyone who's interested in being pinged. And then the stream has officially started. So, for those who doesn't know, Musializer is a music visualizer that we've been developing for quite some time. I'm gonna copy paste the link here in the chat, and for people who's potentially watching on YouTube, I'm gonna put that in the description real quick. Right, so let me just put it like that. So this is going to be in the description. So continue Musializer. So, and this is references. So it's a very simple project. Well, I mean, the concept of this project is actually very relatively simple. So let's actually rebuild this entire thing. Right, and let's actually go ahead and start it. So you're basically greeted with a window where you're supposed to drag and drop some music. So let's actually start a file manager and grab some music, shall we? So I'm gonna go to my project. So this is somewhere at tsodin Musializer music, and let's go ahead and drag and drop something. So just one single file. So this is how it looks like. Right, so we can actually drag and drop several files, so you can have several of them. As you can see, we have a pretty cool UI going on. And you can have a lot of things in here, so you can drag and drop multiple files, and maybe even more. So I want to trigger the scroll bar, right? As you can see, you have a scroll bar and stuff like that. And UI is written completely in C, right? It's completely in C, and it doesn't really use any framework. So essentially what it does, it places shapes, right? So if you can say that we're effectively using our own UI library, right? So you can say it like that. It depends on the perspective, right? So for some people, it's going to be like we're making our own thing. For other people, it's going to be we're just not using anything. It doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, what we're doing, we're just placing shapes on the screen, right? And the concept is the following. So let's actually take some sort of like a small file, maybe this one, right? And you can turn that into a video, right? So right now we have to press a special key like F, and it will start rendering the video using FFmpeg, right? Under the hood, it's literally using FFmpeg. As you can see, it's running FFmpeg right now. If you ever worked with FFmpeg, you recognize this output, right? So this is what it uses under the hood to sort of encode this entire thing. So essentially what it does, it just generates the frames, but it doesn't know how to encode those frames and pack them into a video, and it uses FFmpeg specifically for that, right? It just hands FFmpeg the frames, and FFmpeg eventually just like creates a video. So that's basically what it does. So, and then the idea is that you take this video and maybe you post it somewhere, maybe on YouTube, maybe on Twitter, on some social media and stuff like that. I was planning it to be sort of like a tool for music creators to showcase their music, right? So maybe they just made it some sort of like a teaser that they want to post on Twitter, so and quickly visualize something, right? So because just posting music by itself doesn't really cut it on a modern social media, right? You need to entertain people, you need to tickle their balls a little bit so they click on it. So just the sounds are not enough, you also need to have the visuals. Right. So right now you can only have one kind of visuals, but in the future I actually plan to have a customization, right? So for example, change the color of the background, change the color of the balls themselves that keep tickling while you play the music, right? So visualization inspired by tickling the balls, right? And also like maybe customize the different parameters of physics in here, because you have a little bit of a physics going on, right? So as you can see, there's a little bit of a physics, like the smears and stuff like that, and they are controlled by different constants, by different parameters. Maybe we could allow you to tweak those as well to achieve certain, look and feel, right? So that will be actually kind of interesting, I think. Right, so, and the video is already rendered, so if I take a look at it, so there's an output MP4, and I can open it with VLC, and if I open it with VLC, it's literally video of that visualization. Right, it's literally video, so it just generated the video. So that's basically the idea of the project. That's basically the idea of the project. So in the future, we also kind of plan to have recording from a mic. So right now it's not fully finished. It's sort of like in planning, in development. We did some experiments, some interesting experiments to gather information on how to better organize that. But as of right now, it just visualizes this thing in a real time, right? It visualizes it in real time. But in the future, I plan to make it so you can record something, and your recording becomes one of the samples in the side panel, that you can then render. Right, but I haven't decided how exactly I want to do that. So there's several ways you can approach that from the UX point of view. So I'm still thinking about it. Right, so what we're going to do today, I didn't really plan anything particularly specific today. I just want you to work on UI. Right, there is a couple of rough things about the UI that I would like to fix up. Specifically, what I noticed, by the way, on Reddit, I've seen people using this thing on Reddit. I think somebody posted like a screenshot on Unix porn with the Musializer, and they were just showcasing like this visualization and stuff like that. And so it was like an old version of Musializer, I think. Right, and it was just full screen without these side panels and stuff like that. So apparently there is a use case for Musializer to just showcase it on a screen. And when you are showcasing things on a screen, you probably don't want any of the side panels, any of these things, or anything like that. So there is a use case for that. So I think we need to accommodate for that, right? Just in case people want to do that. So what I'm thinking is that maybe I'm going to create some sort of a button at the corner in here, which you press, and it just removes all of these things and puts it in a full screen. You know, the full screen button. Right, it just puts it in a full screen, and it works as usual, right? So, but without these components, and then you can press escape, and it goes out of the full screen. So this is something that I would like to do. So another thing that I would like to have on the UI before the next Alpha 2 release, right? So we already had one Alpha release, so we're gonna have the next one at some point. So another one, if I would like to have the volume controller, right? Because right now you can't control the volume of the song, right? It's playing at the volume that it's playing. In fact, it's playing at the half of the volume. It's literally playing at the half of the volume. So I think I literally set music volume at a half just in case. Right, but it would be nice to let the user control you know, the volume thing. So I would like to also spend some time implementing the slider that would allow you to control the volume. Right, I'm not sure if it's going to control the volume in a final song. I'm not sure if it's that needed, but just for the preview, I think it's going to be rather useful. So, and if we have enough time, I would like to work maybe on some bugs of the UI when the text is cut off, but we'll see if we'll have time for that. So maybe implementing these two UI components is going to be enough for an entire stream. Where can I find yesterday's WOD? Well, do you know how to use Twitch? I mean, did the Twitch developers made it so unintuitive that people can't find previous VODs anymore? Or what? I think you go to the Tsodin channel, and there was a tab there, previous like streams, and it's there. Yeah. So this one. Thank you so much. It's a Tsodin video, right? I don't know, like Twitch makes UI less and less intuitive. There is this. Yeah, I can see why people cannot find it. Sometimes it's just kind of difficult. It used to be way simpler, I think. Twitch UI used to be way simpler. Now, these days, they kind of overcomplicating it. For whatever reason, maybe this is what they saw in their telemetry, right? So maybe the telemetry told them, if you make it convoluted like that, people spend more time on the website or something. I don't know. Which kind of makes sense. You make the UI convoluted, people don't know how to exit your website, they spend more time on your website. We improved the metric, guys. We improved. Confusion equals retention, exactly. Confuse them to retain their attention. This is fucking genius. I love that. Oh yeah, engagement Vim style. Yeah, exactly. This is so fucking funny. Yeah, because now they spend more time to find the VOD, right? They used to actually find it very quickly, but now they spend more time finding the VOD, and that improves the retention. Holy shit. This could be unironically the reason why it becomes more and more convoluted. So yeah. Oh yeah, it's the same in supermarket. Yeah, exactly. I heard something like that. So you don't buy anything good, good luck getting back. So yeah, I remember. So hearing somewhere that the supermarket actually collects statistics of what people buy, what goods, what products people buy together more often, and they put them on the opposite side of the supermarket. Just fucking intentionally to force you to go from one thing to another thing and watch as many things as like you physically can. They fucking do that. That's one of the dark patterns that they actually do. This is insane, and apparently that works, right? Because that kind of subconsciously forces you to look at more product and potentially buy more products. So that is a thing apparently. IKEA is the best example. Yeah, it is actually. So it forces you to go to the entire place. So okay, let's go ahead and add le button. Le button. But maybe le button is not the first thing that we want to add. We want to add mechanism that allows you to go full screen and back, right? And that mechanism is probably called boolean, right? So you want to have a boolean variable, right? So let's actually create a bool. And so here is the renderer. Okay, so here is everything related to the visualizer itself, right? So let's introduce another boolean in here, right? So we're using like a state framework that is called a C structure, a global C structure. Full screen. So this is full screen. So eventually, as you can see, I'm kind of separating these fields by their functionality, which kind of implies that those things should be themselves separate entities, separate structures, and this is where it's all going, right? So this is where it's all eventually going, but we're not really there yet. We're not really there yet, but I'm sort of preparing to sort of like take this thing and strip them off and put them as separate structures and stuff like that, as separate components. Okay, so we have a full screen. So where do we render this entire thing? So there's a plugin update. There's a plugin update. So are we in a rendering phase, basically FFmpeg rendering? So here we're not. Then we're asking, are we in a capturing state? Capturing state is when we capture stuff on the microphone. So we're not in a capturing state. So here, do we expect any dropped files? We don't expect any dropped files. So here we are handling the press key and stuff like that. And there you go. Here we asking a question. Are we currently playing any track? Is there any currently a track? So I think it doesn't really matter, right? Well, I mean, I think it does matter, right? So because when you currently don't have any track, you're supposed to show drag and drop music here. That's what you're supposed to show. All right, so that means the place that we're the most interested in is when the track is available, right? And we handled all of these things in here. And this is where we are rendering everything. So as you can see, here is the preview, right? So here's the preview. Then we're rendering the preview. So then we're rendering track panel and the timeline. So the track panel is the one on the left and the timeline is the one at the bottom where you can control where the currently cursor is playing. So I suppose this is where we're gonna have a check for the full screen, right? So are we currently in the full screen, right? So are we currently in the full screen? If we're not, we're doing the usual thing, the usual rendering with the left panel and the bottom timeline, right? So let's actually do this sort of separation. So this is probably where we want to do all of this stuff. And essentially, one of the things I want to do, I want to add some sort of a control to turn this into full screen. So this one is interesting. So we use space to pause and unpause the music. That is fine. We use Q to restart the music to the beginning. I feel like this is not needed anymore because we got a timeline. Right, so this stuff was needed when we didn't have a timeline, so it was difficult to restart, so I had like this special key. So I think allocating Q for that is kind of redundant. Right, so we also have F, and F is rendering the final video. I would like to do full screen on F, but it's already taken. I can basically turn it like so. So Q is going to be rendering, and then F is full screen, toggle full screen. But unfortunately, we already released this like that. So it's going to be extremely confusing. It's going to be extremely confusing. So people are suggesting to use R as rendering and F as full screen. I really like that. So unfortunately, R is already taken for a higher level feature. To hot reload the whole thing. But luckily, this feature is a development feature, and it's not released to the end user. So it's our own development feature. So that means we can maybe do something else, right? So maybe we can do F5, right? So do we even have F5 for this kind of stuff? So I wonder if we do. So we can do F5 in here, and then we can say R is rendering, and F is going to be toggle the full screen, right? Toggle the full screen. So yes, not full screen, something like this. I'm gonna actually bring this thing a little bit closer to where we actually check for the full screen. And inside of the full screen, I think we can simply do the rendering. So here is the thing. So we render the preview in here. So this is the preview. But before we can render the preview, we have to do FFT analysis. Not analyzation. Is that even a word in English language? I don't know. I don't speak English. I'm really sorry. So we need to do FFT analysis. And what's funny is that we always need to do it anyway. So we might as well actually move this FFT analysis like outside of the decision full screen or not full screen, because we're gonna do that anyway, so who cares? Right, so in here we're doing the rendering. So okay, so preview boundary. So in a full screen, we're going to have our own preview boundary, but it's not going to include the tracks panel or anything like that. So it's rendered at the 0, 0 with the full width and height, right? Just the full width and height. And then what we do in here, we're just doing FFT render of this entire thing. So actually full screen is way easier than the rest of the panels, right? It's way easier. And that should be it. That should be the entirety of the thing. So let me take a look at the configuration of the build, right? So here we have enabled hot reloading. Okay, so that's cool. And I'm going to rebuild this entire stuff. So hot reloading is enabled. Okay, that's cool. So let's get started, and let's put some music in here. And let's stop, and I'm gonna press F. We're in full screen. I press F again. We're back. Can your React do that so goddamn easily? Just a single boolean and you already have full screen. So just for the record, I do understand that comparing whatever I do with web development, it's stupid. It is in fact stupid. But that makes it even funnier when a random web dev that just stumbled upon our stream take all of this shit seriously. That makes it even funnier. I know that comparing this kind of stuff is dumb. That is intentional. I'm a trained professional. I know how to deal with these kind of people on the internet, so don't try this at home. So Anyway, can you compile C with Webpack? I think you can. So does Webpack has plugin systems? Right. So if it has a plugin system, there's probably some sort of plugin that compiles C to WebAssembly. And once you have a WebAssembly, you can probably pack WebAssembly into the bundle. So bundle is essentially just like a tangled mess of JavaScript, right? It's a single file with a tangled mess of JavaScript. So how can you entangle WebAssembly into that tangled mess? You can convert a WebAssembly module into like byte array, right? I think I already done that before, right? So essentially you can turn it into a byte array, incorporate into the JavaScript that then takes this array and instantiates the WebAssembly module, and there you go, you have WebAssembly as part of the bundle, right? So I think the answer is unironically yes. You can compile C with Webpack, like unironically, I think you can. You can use base64, right? Sure. It doesn't really matter how exactly you store the WebAssembly bytecode. You can store it in an array. I think it would be better to zip it, maybe, compress it somehow. Does the browser, the standard library of browser or whatever, like browser API, have anything for compressing and uncompressing the bytes, the byte arrays or something like that? Does it have something like that? Does anybody know? Yes, so it does have. So there's some sort of API in a browser that you can use from JavaScript to just compress and compress things like gzip, gunzip. Right. In that case, what you can do, you can take WebAssembly module, the bytecode of a WebAssembly module, compress it with gzip, and encode it with something that is text, for instance, base64 or maybe hex, or maybe just straight up JavaScript array. And those save even like more space in your bundle, something like that. So okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to like maybe add some sort of a button, le button that actually indicates that you can go full screen, right? So somewhere here, like you can't really see that because it's behind my camera, but I want something like in here, right? I want something in here. Right, but I think we also need to check if rendering still works. So let's actually try to render. So I'm now pressing R, and this is quite important actually. So we need to not forget to mention somewhere that now rendering is actually R instead of F. So this one is actually too long. Can I escape? So yeah, there is a little bit of a problem with escaping and canceling rendering of the video, right? Because we actually send data to FFmpeg faster than it manages to process it, right? And when we close the pipe through which we're sending frames to FFmpeg, it doesn't exit automatically because it still has a bunch of frames in its backlog. So it doesn't exit until it finishes those. So, right. And I wonder if there's a way to tell it, like abandon all of the frames you have on your queue, just abandon all of them and just quit. Right. I wonder if there's a way to say something like that, or maybe just send a signal to it, or maybe reduce the size of the queue or something. There should be some way to do that. So I think I even have a to-do for that. So we'll think about that in the future. Maybe send a signal. I think sending a signal is a good idea, right? So sending a signal is rather a good idea because I'm pretty sure FFmpeg handles the signals, right? It handles the signals and it will probably try to finalize the video correctly, right? So I don't remember, how does it react to just regular Control C, not S, Control C? It probably finalizes everything. Right, but the question is, how do you do that on Windows, right? Do you have a POSIX style signals on Windows? Is that a thing? Because yeah, so a seek term, seek kill, that's very cool, but all of that is POSIX. But what about the, the operating system for video games, right? Does the operating system that is specifically designed to play video games has POSIX signals, right? Because you don't need POSIX signals to play video games. Like, how do you apply POSIX signals in a video game setting? So video game is just like a full screen thing that takes up like everything, and like, where is the signal? So there's no things that communicate with each other. Well, I mean, the question is still valid. Is there something like that in Windows? Probably. We'll see. Because as far as I know, Windows implements a little bit of the POSIX. Just a tiny bit. Just a... Oh, yes. Anyways. So I wanted to create Le Button. So here is the preview rendering. So this is the preview rendering. And after we finished rendering everything, what we can try to do, we can try to draw a rectangle, right? So let's try to draw a rectangle. So this is going to be the text. Okay, so this is going to be just 0, 0, 100 by 100, and the color is going to be red. So we're going to try to recompile this entire thing, and I'm going to refresh. Right. Oh. Reflexes. Freaking reflexes. Okay, so I have to press F5. There we go. Here is the... It's really inconvenient. F5 is really inconvenient. I gotta tell you. Anyway, so, but I mean, it's a development feature, so the developers have to suffer anyway, right? It's not for the end user, and the user doesn't really have to suffer, so... anyway, so I think this thing has to be inside of the preview, right? So it has to be inside of the preview. So somebody suggesting H for hot reload. Maybe, I don't know. So I want it to be some sort of a key. Yeah, I want it to be some sort of a key. That is not one of the functional keys, because I think functional keys is just like, yikes, too much to, like, you know, reach with your fingers. So let's actually do H. So this is going to be H, and let's put it like that. Let's put it like that. So I'm gonna restart this entire stuff, and yeah boy. All right, so I'm gonna put my favorite song, and let me see if that stuff still works, because now I can change this entire thing to green, for instance. I can change it to green, and I'm gonna reload this entire stuff, and boom, it's green. Can your React do that? Can you hot reload React? You cannot. You need a separate library for that, but we have that out of the box. We're using literal mechanism of operating system. And you need a separate library for that. Anyway, so let's actually make it something like white, right? So let's make it something like white. I'm gonna regret it. I'm really gonna regret it. But maybe it's just a matter of getting used to that. Because I've been using R for hot reloading for so long, it's really difficult to change the habits. Anyway, so let's actually try to place this entire thing on the preview boundary, right? So the preview boundary is gonna be X. So we got that. Preview boundary Y, and it's gonna be 100, 100, blah blah blah, as usual. So I'm gonna restart that, and boom. So it is within this entire thing. But to be fair, personally, I want it to be somewhere maybe here, or maybe it has to be somewhere here. I think it has to be somewhere here. Right, so that means let's actually have some sort of a constant, right? So maybe something like a full screen Le Button, and it's gonna be 100, right? So that's the full screen Le Button, and let's do full screen Le Button, and that's the whole thing. So in terms of X, now it has to be preview plus the preview boundary width, but minus the size of the full screen Le Button. Simple maths, right? Simple maths. So that way it is aligned to the right. As simple as that. Right, it is aligned to the right. So maybe this is where we want to do that, right? So maybe this is where... Okay, so let me see. We need to have some sort of a like a padding, right? So full screen button padding. It's more of a margin, I think. It's more of a margin, right? So let's actually make it 10 pixels, and essentially it is going to sort of move this entire thing to the left on X and down on Y. Right, so roughly like that. So roughly like that. So let me, so now I have to be really, really careful, right? So I'm gonna press H, and there we go. So as you can see, it actually has a little bit of a padding in here. And we can now even control this entire padding. We can say, so what about if it was maybe 50, right? How about 50? Right, so I'm gonna do that, so and I can control that quite easily in C. So maybe the size of this lebatone has to be slightly smaller. What about 75? So, yeah, so that's a little bit better. That's a little bit better, maybe even a 60. And maybe, how about some 69? A 69. So this is lebaton, right? So that's basically lebaton. Okay, so I suppose it has to have the color the same as this thing, right? It has to have this specific color. And as far as I know, I actually consolidated that color in here. So we have color track panel, like button background. So we can use that. We can probably even define color full screen button background. And we can say that it is equal to the same color as the color background, so maybe button background. So let's say that it's going to be like literally the same, right? It is literally the same, right? So let's actually go back to where we were, right? Go back to where we were and try to recompile this entire thing. And boom, look at that. Does it look cool? Does it look cool? I think it looks pretty cool, right? So it probably needs to be sort of like rounded, right? So it needs to have rounded corners as in here. Right, as you can see, there's a little bit of rounded corners. There's not that much anti-aliasing, but I mean, if we do full screen, it gets a little bit bad. Right, at least the scroll button actually kind of becomes a little bit better. But I mean, if you look from the far away, it looks all right. So I think we need to do something similar. So if I remember correctly, draw round rectangle. Yeah, rounded. So draw rectangle rounded. We can try to use something like this, rectangle rounded, but this one actually accepts a rectangle roundness and segments instead of like X, Y, width and height. So that means we need to put all of that stuff, into a separate rectangle. So let's actually quickly do that. So we need some sort of a rectangle, full screen button boundary. Right, so this is basically the boundary, and we can simply move all of that stuff in here, so that way we can just use it like that, right? So we can just use it like that. The next thing is going to be roundness. I'm not quite sure what kind of roundness do we want to have in here. So here we're using 0.8 and 20, so maybe I'm going to use the same parameters in here, right? So segments, and then the color is this one. Right, so let's try to compile this entire thing. Right, so we're gonna try to compile, and there we go. So that's the roundness. I think it's too much for the roundness of this particular, but maybe it's fine. What do you guys think? Is that a good roundness? I'm not quite sure. We can make the roundness a little bit smaller, maybe. So maybe 9. Right, so did it actually... Ooh, so let me see. So roundness, so roundness 0 is actually no roundness whatsoever. I see the bigger, okay, what about like half of the roundness then? Right, so it's from 0 to 1, the classical interpolation. This is already better. I kind of like how it looks like, right? I kind of like how it looks like. So that's a pretty cool lebatone. So now what we need to do, we want to highlight it when we actually hover over that specific button, right? Like in here. When we hover over it, we want to highlight it. So we need to know that we're inside of that button or not. So as far as I know, we have the mouse pointer somewhere here. Do we have it? I think we don't, right? But in any case, I'm going to just do check collision point rectangle. So mouse versus full screen button boundary, right? And if we are inside of it, maybe we want to do something about it. For instance, we can change the color. So we can actually factor out the color into a separate variable, right? So this is going to be the color, right? So maybe let's put it like this. So this is the color. And initially it's going to be that. Maybe initially it's not going to be anything, right? And in here it's going to be color, just that. There we go. So this is the full screen background color. And let's introduce another one, right? So introduce another one, which is going to be hover over, right? So full screen button background, hover over, which is the same as the track button hover over. There we go. Let's actually go back. And this one is hover over. There we go. So maybe we can even turn this entire thing into a single line because it's not that big anymore. So that looks fine. That looks fine. So this entire thing could have been like its own component, right? So we can put all of that behind its own scope. And maybe eventually we're going to turn it into a separate function, similar to timeline, tracks panel, and stuff like that. As you can see, each individual component is its own function that accepts the boundary within which you want to render all of that. I think that makes sense, right? So you have these individual components that you can reuse and stuff like that. So eventually you have your own React. It's not really React, it's closer to IMGUI, but I mean, you get the idea. So to be fair, IMGUI is way more reactive than React, I'm telling you, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's checking the state on the level of each individual like frame or something. So vector 2. So it's always consistent. It's always consistent no matter the current frame. Get a mouse position, right? So we're gonna get the mouse position, and let me refresh this entire thing, and oh, it's the other way around, right? So let's actually try to swap all of that. So if mouse within, that's kind of strange, right? So let me, maybe there's something wrong with the background. No, everything's fine with the background. Background is kind of, yeah. But then track hover over. So brightness is a little bit bigger, so that's what we're using in here. Oh yeah, it is in fact the other way around. Okay, so I didn't really notice that. So now look at that. Ooh, 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 ooh. It would be nice to have some sort of like icon, right? So what kind of icons can we have in there? What kind of icons can we have in here? I don't know. We can actually try to start Inkscape, I think. Let's start Inkscape. SVG icon, yeah. So some sort of SVG icon, but I'm not sure if Raylib can work with SVGs. SVGs nuts? Oh, got it. Sorry. What we're gonna do in here? Is there any way to do a different background? Checkerboard background. So it's too much. It's probably gonna. Okay, I can't. Oh, yo! Look at that. Isn't that a poggers? I think. Oh my god, that's beautiful. So let's start with a rectangle, right? So it's supposed to have, yeah, it's supposed to have the stroke around it, right? So it's actually going to be 100. Maybe 100 is too much. Let's say 20. So that's basically what we have in here. I suppose this one is going to be something like that, and there will be no actual background in here. So maybe we can do something like this, right? So this could be like that, but I mean, it's probably too much. One of the things we can do, we can just like round it up like so, right? We can try to round things up like so, but still keep this thing like that. Yeah. So something like this, right? Something like this, and let's make it maybe 10. And of course, this entire thing has to be square. Right now, it's not particularly square. So let's make it 100 by 100. Yeah, there we go. And essentially, we can try to have another rectangle, right? So this one is going to be something like this. Yeah, something like this. And we're going to put it. So I probably want to have some sort of alignment. That's the thing. That is aligned at the center, right? So this is basically at the center. Then we can have something like this, which we want to rotate 90 degrees and probably also align at the center. So can we take this thing and then this thing and then subtract one from another? So there is a difference. Okay, so that kind of worked, but not the way I expected it to work, but we can try to do that one more time. Right, so then we can do path and then difference. Yeah, so that's basically the icon for full screen or something like that. Could that be the icon for full screen? I don't know. So what's the icon in YouTube? Right, so let's actually go to YouTube. Looks amazing, kind of worked. Okay, so we can do that. Trying Kotlin for the first time. Wait, did I try Kotlin? I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. Like, do I know? Yeah, okay. So this is what I was trying to go for. Right. So, but it actually put these additional things and I don't really know like how to, but that's probably fine. That's even probably better. Right. So this kind of thing is even better. Yeah. Okay, so let's actually go to this kind of thing. So resize page content. So resize page on drawing or selection. For those who's interesting, why am I so good at this kind of thing? This is because I do my thumbnails in Inkscape. So I'm kind of good at Inkscape because I grinded it for quite some time already, right? So yeah, that's why I'm kind of good with it. So now if I, yeah, so that's like that. So actually I use a combination of Krita and Inkscape. I use Krita when I can't just do the vector graphics. So sometimes maybe I want to do additional effects, right, that are not present in Inkscape. So I do post-processing in Krita. Yeah, I do a lot of post-processing in Krita actually, right? Because I need to crank up the saturation to make the neurons, you know, activate in people's brain when they scroll through YouTube, right? You need to crank up the saturation, so that's very important. I can do that only in Krita. It's very important, right? So I'm giving you away like YouTube tricks. Saturation, contrast. Contrast is really important. So there's also an interesting trick that is like also super important. I'm gonna give you away that for free. So take the homepage, right? Take a homepage, and then basically screenshot and Photoshop your thumbnail in here. Photoshop it in here, and then just move away on a distance and just squint your eyes and make sure, is your thumbnail noticeable in that setting? So basically, is your thumbnail noticeable when you just glance over the home page? And if it is, that means it's going to be noticeable in any possible setting, so it's going to stand out. So that's how you do that, right? So that's one of the important things. So because of that, something like just a red background kind of fits that definition, right? If you just like make a thumbnail that is red background, it's gonna fit the definition that I gave you perfectly, and it's gonna work, but it's gonna work only for one time, because people are not dumb, right? So they can fall off for that once, but then once they're familiar with your content, they will have this association of this red thingy with your content, and they're not going to fall for that twice. So the second time, this kind of thing is not going to work. Right. Next time you go pink, yeah, exactly. It's just, you have to switch the colors all the time, right? So you just keep scrolling through the colors. What a psyop. Yes, believe it or not. Like professional YouTubers, like are psyop specialists. Like they know how to do psyops. So so it's actually freaking insane. Like anyway. I'm not really that good at it, unfortunately, right? So because I don't get paid for it, so I don't have that much motivation to go too deep into this kind of stuff. But it is what it is, and it isn't what it isn't. Okay, so let's actually save this scheiße. So let me see. So we have like different resources. We already have. Okay, so there's resources logo. We can create maybe icons, right? So, and this is where we can try to save this entire thing. Right, so this is gonna be that, and this is full screen. Look, I didn't even have to steal anything from the internet. Isn't that cool? Right? Didn't even have to steal anything. It's just like, yeah, just a bunch of shapes, and there you go, you get an icon. I didn't even have to use Midjourney. Imagine using Midjourney just to get that. All right, so let's try to convert that into PNG, because we probably won't have PNG, right? So, but using ImageMagick is actually kind of dumb for this kind of thing. You will see why. Because by default, ImageMagick will give you white background on SVG. Right, so you have white sort of like an outline, and then white background, and it looks like shit. It's just like, yeah. So in ImageMagick, you have to do, I think, background none, and only then it will create PNG. It didn't even work. Right, it didn't even work, so I don't remember how to do that. Maybe you have to put it somewhere here. Does it really matter? Yeah, so it does matter where exactly you put it. It's like FFmpeg. Yes, it's like maybe it is literally like FFmpeg, right? So maybe all of the flags are like associated with the input up until you provide the input, and then the next flags are associated with the output up until the moment you provide the out. Maybe like ImageMagick literally works like FFmpeg. Who knows? So maybe FFmpeg is not the only program that follows that paradigm. Okay, so the thing we need to do, we need to load this shit up. Unfortunately, I don't have a way to add new resources to the application without restarting the whole application. So I can't hot reload new resources because I never really developed a mechanism for that. I think if I spend some time developing a mechanism for that, maybe I could do that. Right, maybe we need to have some sort of a mechanism of catalog, right? So a catalog, basically the file system within which you are, yeah, so essentially you try to access the resource by its file path, and if it's not loaded, it's going to be loaded for the first time. Yeah, I think we need to develop a system like that. Right, a system like that, sort of like an asset manager. Wait, you can hot reload? Yes, I can. I can even show you. So for instance, do you see the button in here? Do you see the button? I can go to plug C, and I can essentially change the color of this entire thing to red, right in the native code, right in the native C code, by the way. So the only thing I need to do, I need to recompile my Webpack bundle and then hot reload, and as you can see, it's red now. It is red now. So it's a native application written in C. No Electron, no JVM, no anything like that. Native application written in C. And if you wonder how did I manage to do that, well, this is a secret that was forgotten in software development. This is literally the basic mechanism that is provided by your operating system. Being able to hot reload a program, a native program, is the basic mechanism that exists in any modern operating system. Windows, Linux, macOS, it just exists there. Programmers been caught up with web technologies for so long, they completely forgot that this kind of shit exists. So people literally forgetting how to develop software, like literally unironically. They don't remember how to do that. Anyways. But I won't be able to hot reload the assets, right? Because I don't have a good sort of abstraction for that. I kind of know what kind of abstractions I want to have, but right, we'll see. So full screen icon, right? So and when we do plug init, right? When we do plug init, we actually load a bunch of things in here. So specifically, yeah, we load in the TTF, the font, and stuff like that. So one of the things we probably want to do full screen icon, right? So we're gonna do load image, right? And here it's just a simple function that accepts the file path, right? So it accepts the file path. So here we have to do resources, and so I think it's icons. So let me see, resources, icons, okay, and yesu, full screen PNG. Okay, go. Full screen PNG. So I'll have to recompile this entire stuff and restart it from scratch completely. So does it say that we managed to load full screen PNG? Yes, as you can see, full screen PNG has been loaded successfully. That is absolutely epic. That is absolutely epic, not gonna lie. Right. So full screen button, and what we want to do here. So here we just render rectangle rounded thingy majingy. So that's what we do. That's what we do. So in here we need to draw image. Yeah, can we even draw the image? I don't think so. So let's actually go to Raylib. We can do the following thing. I can use Google. Right, so I'm going to go to Google. Right, so Google. I'm going to provide the Raylib src. Yeah, this one, src raylib.h. And I'm going to try to put a query in there. What's going to be the query? So thing that accepts an image. Something that accepts an image. So what kind of functions accept image? Right, not that many, but so something that also accepts maybe a couple of integers. You can image resize. So I think you cannot draw image. Yeah, you can draw texture. So I think it's more like a texture 2D. Yeah, so okay, so here it is. Oh, I probably should use maybe nested. Yeah, so something like this. We can draw texture, but we can't draw image. There's no such thing as draw image. So that means we will have to turn an image into a texture. So image texture. Yeah, load texture from image. So that's one of the things we want to be able to do. Load texture from image. So okay, so that's fine. So let's go ahead and do that. Full screen icon. Let's call it image then, and then we're gonna have a texture 2D. So this is texture. So let's go to the compilation errors. Yes. Where is my knob? All right. So full screen image and full screen texture, load texture from image, from this one, boom. So what's going to be the next thing? Draw texture, EX. Do we want to do EX? I'm not quite sure. So, but the texture that I want to render, so we probably do want to have that because we'll need to scale it at some point. Right, so the texture we need to render in here is full screen texture. Right, so full screen texture. What's the position? At what position we're rendering this entire stuff? We're rendering it at position of the full screen button boundary. So that's where we're rendering this entire thing, right? So that's where we're rendering this entire thing. So I can just set the rotation. I'm not sure if you can see all of that stuff. Maybe you can. Right. So, but I'm gonna just put it like that. So rotation is going to be 0. Scale, I'm going to put it like this, and the tint is going to be white, right? So this is going to be white. Float scale, for now it's going to be 1. The position is going to be something like this. So vector 2 position, and we are taking full screen button boundary, and we take X and Y. We take X and Y. Honestly, we can actually do something like plus the width by but divided by 2, right? So, and then the height but divided by 2. So I want to center the icon, yeah, at the center of the button. So that's what I want to do. I just want to center it right there. So I just add that, but then I'll have to subtract the half of the width of the icon, and it's something full screen image. I think width is in fact available in there. So if I take a look at the image, right, so image, here is the definition. It does have width and height, so which is precisely what I need in here. So it's going to be width 2, and in here we'll have to subtract half of the height. So it may go over the boundaries. It may go over the boundaries because it's actually rather huge, right? So if you take a look at the resources at the icon, it's rather huge. So file. So let me show. Yeah, it's 378. So it's kind of too big. So we probably want to make it smaller, right? But I want to see how big it's going to be, right? It's going to be kind of funny, I think. It's going to be kind of funny how big it is, right? So it seems to be compiling. Okay, so let's restart this entire stuff. Let's copy paste some stuff in here. There we go. That's the icon. Isn't that Pogue? Isn't that Pogue? Is this freaking Pogue, mate? Okay, so one of the things we can do, we can actually scale it, right? So we have, you know, a scale parameter for a reason. So we can just make it half, right? So we can make it half. Right, so, and let's just, there we go. So it's smaller, but though not really that smaller, that much smaller. So that means we have to use the scale thingy for the for this thing. So we need to scale up this stuff. So this is going to be multiplied by scale, so it's adjust itself a little bit better. Right. Ah, shit. There we go. So now, right, we can keep adjusting this stuff. We can keep adjusting this stuff, and becomes smaller and smaller. To be fair, I think this stuff has to be dependent on the button size, right? On the button size. So we already have a full screen button, so this is more of a size. And we can use it like this. So yeah, we can divide this thing by the full screen width or something like that. So since this thing is way smaller, maybe that will create a very interesting, maybe not. I don't think it's a particularly great idea, but oh, okay, so that's kind of cool. And then we can say that it's half of that. So it's actually accidentally adjusted it perfectly, right? So it accidentally adjusted it perfectly, so we can do 75. Where is my anti-aliasing? This is disgusting. Okay, so what about, I think half was kind of okay, maybe? Half was kind of okay. Maybe 6 was kind of okay. Yeah, this is good. This is kind of good. So we also, it's a little bit too bright, I think. So for example, in here, this is not white, isn't it? I don't remember the color of the text that is used for the track panel. Right, so track panel. So what's the color of the text we use in there, chat? So draw text. That's just white, okay. So that's kind of unexpected, but okay. So what if we use color? You can't really see Scheiße, meine Freunde. Yeah, so color, brightness. So we take white, but we just make it a little bit darker, like this. So that's going to be the tint of the texture, hopefully. Yeah, so, okay, that's a little bit better. So I think white was a little bit too bright for this thing. So maybe we can even make it a little bit darker in here. Yeah. So that's, what do you guys think? So in terms of color, I think that's a little bit better. In terms of color. But I don't like the lack of anti-aliasing. It's a little bit too harsh. One of the things we can try to do, we can try to set the texture filter for this entire thing, but that will yet again require restarting this entire thing. Right, so when we load this entire stuff, if I remember correctly, there was a set texture filter. That's right. So texture filter, we taking this goddamn texture and we're setting a bilinear filter. Texture filter bilinear. We've set that scheiße in here, and that should smooth it out just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. So let's actually restart this entire stuff. Let's put this stuff in here. Boom. That's a little bit better, maybe, probably. Yeah, I guess. I think I would like to make it, make the tint of this entire stuff even more, you know, grayish, even like half or something like that. Yeah, there we go. So something like this is actually kind of good. Looks the same, yeah. It kind of does. Still looks like shit. Okay, so all right, so something like this. We can. It would be kind of nice to have 2 versions of it, right? So when you doing it like that, when you hover, it just like puts these things apart a little bit. Right. Looks inverted, looks more like go out of full screen. Oh yeah, probably. But I mean, we just need something in here, right? So we just need something in here so it looks like a full screen button. We can adjust the communication to the user a little bit later. The gray makes it look unclickable. Maybe. Okay, so about 10. Yeah, probably. Also, there's a little bit of a strange thing in here, is that it doesn't really... The fact that it doesn't really adjust its size according to the size of the window is kind of weird, but maybe I'll fix that a little bit later. Yeah, I can fix that a little bit later. Anyway, so all of that is just the details. So now, when we are inside of this entire stuff, and I know is mouse button released, mouse button left, what do is we take the full screen, right, so we take the full screen and we set it to true. We set the full screen to true. Okay. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But we also need to have the same button when we are in full screen. Right. So we need sort of like the same button when we are in full screen. So what I'm thinking is that maybe I should finally factor out the entire body in here, into its own thing, right? So maybe that would be something nice to have. Right. So let's do the following thing. Full screen button, and this is a function. So we're gonna have a function full screen button, and I'm gonna go up where we have all of the components. So here we have a tracks panel component, right? So it's the thing on the left, right? So then we have a timeline and everything, and there we go. So I'm gonna put this stuff in here, and so this is going to be full screen button, right? So this is a full screen button. So interestingly, maybe it should accept the boundary in here, but I'm not really 100% sure if that's a good idea. So we can do something interesting, actually. We can return Boolean. Right. So we can essentially return Boolean like so. So then we can take the place where we call this function and say, okay, p full screen is equal to not full screen. That way, we can actually move this entire thing outside of the condition of whether we are in full screen or not full screen, right? So we're gonna completely put this stuff outside. And yeah, so essentially it's going to be available in both of the cases. So here's an interesting thing. The full screen button depends on a preview boundary. So maybe one of the things we have to pass in there is the preview boundary. So that's actually very interesting. So yeah, that's one of the things we'll probably have to do. So let's go to the compilation errors. Right, so let's go to the compilation errors. So so what does it say? Expected identifier but got... Oh yes, this is a semicolon, so that's fine. So preview boundary. So let's actually say that full screen button accepts the boundary of the preview for which it puts on a full screen. I think that makes sense, right? So here we're gonna take a rectangle and we can say preview boundary. It's not the boundary of the button itself, but the boundary of the preview window for which it puts that thing in the full screen, right? And it adjusts itself according to that preview boundary. So that's actually a good idea, right? I think it's generally a good idea. So, and what's interesting is now, depending on whether we are in full screen or not full screen, the preview boundary is different. So that means we still have to have two instances of full screen in here. So preview boundary here and another preview boundary in here, because they are different depending on the mode, right? They are in fact different on the mode. But maybe this is something that we want to have, because we're going to have different icons depending on whether we are in full screen mode or not full screen mode, right? So essentially, and the actual icon of full screen button is going to be the parameter of this function, right? So yes. Okay, so, and let's actually, I think, do I need to restart that? I don't think so. So now, yeah, there we go. So the icon definitely has to be different. But to be fair, if we're gonna go into the full screen, I don't think I want to have this button here visible. I think we could try to pull off the trick where it's only visible when you're going very close to it with the mouse. Right, if your mouse is far away, it's going to be invisible or something like that. So if you're close enough, it becomes half transparent, right? But if you're inside of it, it becomes like fully transparent, and you can actually do something with it. That's a cool idea, actually. Right, and of course you need to have two separate two separate icons for that to indicate, like, maybe we even need to have 3 icons, because if I'm in this state, when I hover over it, it should switch the icon. It should switch the icon, and when I press it, it should be a different icon. So there's sort of like a state stuff. Right, so yeah. Isn't that cool? And you know what's cool is that all of that is in C. You wouldn't think that this kind of UI development could be in C, but we're doing that in C. Like, it's like rough around the edges. I do understand that, but because it's in the process of development, right? It is in fact in the process of development. So yeah, the more time I spend on this thing, the cooler it will look, right? So it's just a matter of how much time and effort I spent on this thing. It's just going to become better and better and better and better. Right. So somebody's saying something interesting. Factor out the reactivity and rendering to sort of components like an Elm, and you got something better than React. Well, yeah. So essentially, you notice that how I just write down the code that needs to put something on the screen, right? Until it becomes very messy. But once it becomes very messy, it becomes obvious how to factor it out into a sort of separate component, right? So full screen button, right? And we factored out full screen button function, and it is sort of its own component that tucks into itself all of the mess that we had. And now it has a logical parameters, right? So for example, preview boundary with which it is associated is a logical parameter. Another logical parameter is going to be an icon that is currently displaying, right? So, and depending on the state of the application, we're going to pass just different icon in there, and you can parameterize this mess more and more until it feels like an actual component. Right, and soon it becomes a library of different components. And maybe at some point, I will notice that I can factor out the button, just a generic button, out of the full screen button and reuse it for some other buttons. So that way I will have a hierarchy of components. I have just generic button that I can put anywhere. Then I have a full screen button that I can only put on a preview boundary at the corners there. Right, and it uses functionality of a generic button. There could be another button that also reuses the same generic functionality as the full screen button. So you see, people get turned off when they see my approach of just writing messy code that gets the job done, but then I use that mess to tell me what kind of patterns I can extract, and now I have components. So the architecture writes itself depending on the problem that I'm solving. I'm not trying to design up front. I'm just letting the mess guide me to how I need to organize it. Right. So you can't organize things before you know what you need to do. First, you need to explore. First, you need to know what you need to do. Makes sense. It just makes sense, right? Especially when you try it and see that, yeah, that makes sense. You first try to solve the problem, and then depending on the problem, you organize it accordingly. So if you don't want to do, if you want to do upfront designing of the architecture, you literally need to simulate your program in your brain, right? Because like, it's like you don't know what you need. Like, you need to explore that. You need to discover all this stuff. Does it make sense? I'm not sure if it makes sense. Yesu, kawaii freaking desu. So what we need in here, right? So what we need in here, we need essentially, yeah, different icons. We need different icons in here. So let me actually put a to-do for that. So different full screen button icons depending on the current state of preview. Right, so, and another thing that I would like to have is if p full screen, so do not show full screen button if the cursor is too far away from it. Right. I kind of want to implement that, you know, idea where if you just put it away, it's not visible, but if you get closer, it becomes visible, because maybe you just want to essentially just put it in full screen as sort of a display or something, right? And you don't want the UI elements distract you or something like that. So as far as I know, quite often people put a timer on these kind of buttons, right? So especially YouTube likes to do that. Right? When you go in YouTube in full screen, you can see UI for some time, and if you idle for long enough, it disappears. Maybe this is what we want to do. This is a good idea, actually. So essentially, if you like move around, this button appears, and if you idle long enough, it just disappears. That makes sense. So, and here we have event loop, right? So we have a plug update, and in the plug update, we can also get the time frame, frame time, I think, yeah, frame time. And essentially, we can have a variable that counts the time, right? So every time you move your mouse around, right? You move your mouse around, that timer gets reset, and it counts down with get frame time until it reaches 0, and as soon as it reaches 0, we just don't show that element. And then you move around, the timer gets reset. It's actually really relatively easy to implement, I think. So the question is, how can we know that the mouse moved? Because there is no event system and ray leap. You can only get what happened. You don't get notified, you can only ask what happened. So there should be something, you can get the mouse position, but I feel like you can also get mouse position delta, get mouse position, yeah, get mouse position delta. So that's actually really interesting. So delta between frames. And I suppose we can just get the length of that delta, and if it's 0, that means the mouse was not moved between the frames, so it stands still. All right, so let me try to do something in here, right? Let me try to do something in here. So this is gonna be plug, so this is a full screen, so float full screen timer, right? So this is a full screen timer. When it is a 0, we're not gonna show anything, I suppose, like a 0 or less. Right, so if p full screen, so full screen button, if p full screen timer is greater than 0, we're showing le button. We are showing the le button. Then another thing we probably want to do, we want to subtract the get frame time. We want to count it down. So if it's already 0 or less than 0, it's not going to be updated. The next thing we want to do after that, we're going to take mouse delta, and we probably want to do something like vector2 length. And if this thing is greater than 0, this entire timer is going to be reset to, for how long we want this thing to be visible. 3 seconds, I think, is all right. Right, so it's going to be on the screen for 3 seconds. It's going to be on the screen for 3 seconds. And after that, it's going to disappear. It's going to disappear like immediately. Maybe we want to fade it out. Right, maybe we want to fade it out. All right, so I think 3 seconds is all right. So vector2 length is not a thing. All right, I wonder why. Okay, it compiled anyway, so that means it was found by the linker, right? So I probably need to do something like ray math, right? So the definition is probably somewhere in ray math. Look at that, it's not. All right, so all right. So I'm gonna okay. Did I? That was weird, but anyway. Okay. No set timeout. We don't have any set timeout or anything like that, and you can just do that. So, and probably because we're organizing our own event loop, right? Because JavaScript people have to use set timeout and everything because they don't have a control over the event loop. The event loop is implemented for them by more experienced developers, right? By more experienced developers, and it's baked into the JavaScript runtime. They can't control it. That's why they have to go through this hoop of set timeout and stuff like that. We have our own event loop. That's why we don't need to have set timeout. We can bake whatever functionality we want straight into the event loop. That's how real developers write software. They modify event loop directly because they have an access to it, unlike those JavaScript developers. Anyways, so so we get that. So there is a little bit of a problem. Yeah. I think when I do that for the first time, right, when I do that for the first time, it's equal to 0. It disappears, kind of. It kind of disappears. So maybe we have to set it to 3 right away during the initialization. Right, where's the plugin init? So full screen timer, and this is going to be 3. So I think I need to factor out this magical constant to something else, but I'm not really sure. Full screen timer sex. It's a seconds. It's not what you thought. It's a second. Full. Yeah, full screen timer. Chat. Full screen timer sex. All right. So Yusu. So yeah, we'll have to restart one more time. So now I press, it appears until we idle long enough, and that's good. Full sex, yes, gotcha, hyper. It's pretty cool. To be fair, I mean, do we want to keep it like that? Right. So the encoding probably right now is shit, I realized that, so I'm sorry, I'm just testing things. Right, so there we go. Can you click it while it disappeared? Let's actually see. You can't. Because we literally don't render it and don't handle it. Right. So you first need to make it appear, and only then you can click. So you can't click it while it's not. It's a good question. Yeah. I think it's all right. It's a relatively reasonable behavior. So yeah. I think it's all right. Nice. And Yusu. So maybe we want to add some more stuff in here. So we have the scroll bar. Don't disappear if the cursor is on top. I don't know. I think the current behavior is all right. I think it is all right. Yeah. So it's not really full screen. It's a full window, right? So full screen is going to be if you, you know, really do full screen, right? Like a video game, right? But this is just like a full window. So you're trying to hide the elements, right? If you want to just showcase it like that, right? Because I saw the use case of Musializer like this. There was a use case for Musializer like this where people was just like showing off on their desktop, right? And so that's what I'm trying to facilitate in here, right? So just enable people to do this kind of stuff. All right, so we fixed that to do, right? So I think we did in fact fix that to do right away. And the only to do that is left is icons, I suppose, right? So we want to have different kinds of icons depending on the situation and stuff like that. But I'm registering for 1.5 hours. Right, and I want to make a break. Unix porn screenshot. Yeah, somebody posted like Musializer on Unix porn, And so that means there is such use case, and I don't want to kill it accidentally, right? So since I'm being an ethical open source software developer, I'm not going to add any telemetry into my software because it's fucking disgusting. Like you literally turning your software into malware, right? So I'm not putting any telemetry. So the only way I can gather information about use cases is just by observing how people use it in the wild, right? By observing how people use it in the wild. It's kind of interesting, like, what if people who develop software, instead of turning their software into malware, right, by adding telemetry and stuff like that, they spend time on monitoring Reddit, Twitter, and social networks and gathering information about use cases from there, because people are showing off how they're using their software, how they do these kind of things, they write tutorials and stuff like that. So why not develop a technology that scrapes all of that and summarizes and organizes and tells you more about how your users use your thing? It's probably not a full information, right? So some stuff can get outdated and everything. Right, but it's more ethical, at least, maybe? I'm not sure. Like, I'm never really been in full charge of like very big commercial software, right? So maybe I'm saying gibberish, right? So maybe it's not feasible to do it like that. But I have a feeling, as you know, I have a feeling that that could be also a feasible thing and more ethical. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of telemetry, but the problem is that most people are not vocal about their use of software. We need telemetry to observe people who are silently suffering, so to speak. Yeah, I understand. I understand that argument. I was just thinking about it. So if we're talking about the paid software, can you just maybe disable telemetry and give a discount for people who enable telemetry? Something like that. So essentially you're buying data from the users. So, yeah, so you're basically buying the data from the users. You give them discount for your software, so that way you can, you know, make it better, so you can then make more money off of that. So I don't know. Cheaper software if you give away freedom. Yeah, exactly. Since technically you're selling them your data, just that nowadays they're getting it for free. Yeah, exactly. So basically just, you know, pay users for the data, right? Just pay them in the form of a discount. I think maybe that's reasonable. So I would like to make a break because I need to refill my tea and stuff like that. And after the break, I think we're gonna finish it off, right? So the last thing I probably want to do is I want to have different icons depending on the situation and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So we need a different sort of like levels of icon. I kind of want to steal some ideas from YouTube. Right, so at least like, get inspired. I'm sorry, not steal, get inspired. So I raise my temple. Am I really that obnoxious with my titles? Holy shit, okay. Sometimes, yeah, so this is what I want. Can you see what... Tsodin, shut the fuck up. Just a second. Right, so can you see what is going on? So, yeah, essentially, when you hover, it just like becomes like bigger. Like it does animation. I'm not sure if I want to do animation right now, but how does it look like when I, you know, expand it? Okay, this is actually kind of cool. So they basically invert those things. All right, so they basically invert those things. I wonder if we can do the same thing and if it's gonna work well. So when I was actually subtracting one shape for another one, I was going for this specific look actually. Right, I was kind of going for this specific look, but it never really worked out. So I have a couple of ideas on how we can try to realize that. Okay, so Inkscape. I should have maybe started it slightly differently, right? So I'm gonna go to resources, icons, So here's that. And I'm gonna do Inkscape in here. Okay, so let's give it another try. So we're gonna have 100 by 100. So this is 100 by 100. One of the things we can try to do, we can try to convert the stroke to path. Yeah, so what that did, that actually turned this into this kind of stuff. So the entire path sort of became like the shape. It sort of became the shape, right? And we can try to work with that. We can now try to create this kind of thing, right? This kind of thing. And probably center it, right? So let's not change the size of any of that stuff, right? So, and we put it like this. And I think by doing subtraction from this to this, difference. Yes, that's what yeah, I should have actually converted this entire thing to path right away. So this is what I wanted. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, now I know how to achieve this kind of stuff. Okay, so now we have this kind of thing. So it's a little bit inconvenient, but yeah, I think we can work with that. So snapping of Inkscape is actually really useful, right? So because it basically has, like, it snaps it to different points, like a center point, the edge, and stuff like that, and automatically allows it to just align things like so. Right, so let's actually do subtraction. So difference, there we go. So, and then difference in here, there we go. So, will Google hire me to do UI for YouTube? Because I recreated the YouTube full screen icon very easily. Easy peasy lemon squeeze. So, and interestingly, this is like a single shape, but I can't separate that shape, unfortunately, right? So it's still part of kind of the same thing. I could try to, oh shit, okay, so that kind of didn't work. So I don't really know how to cut it out. Division, right? So yeah, I don't know, right? So this is a single shape. It's not even grouped shape, but how can I remove this thing, like separate this thing out of that single shape? Does anybody know? Do we have any professional Inkscapers in the chat? Do we have any professional Inkscapers? Because if I could quite easily just do that. Just take one of the corners and duplicate. How do you duplicate? So I can select that, and it copy pastes the whole thing. All right. Path to object. Break apart. Maybe we can try to do that. Oh, holy shit! Who said break apart? Thank you so much, Dongsao. Thank you. This is genius. Okay. So, are you a professional Inkscaper? Or maybe you know CorelDRAW, because as far as I know, from the UX point of view, Inkscape was inspired very heavily by CorelDRAW. So they basically copied all of these things, right? And by the way, if you learn Inkscape, you basically also know CorelDRAW, right? They're trying to keep sort of like UI, UX, and flow kind of similar. So if you already know CorelDRAW, it's very easy for you to switch to this thing. And this is a very useful skill, as you can see, right? It's a very useful skill. And this entire thing works on the level of SVGs, right? You can quite easily modify SVGs and stuff like that. It's a very lifesaver tool. Like, I absolutely love it. I use it every day for different things. Right, and it's absolutely free and it's open source, right? So if you want to use it, just Google up Inkscape. Yeah. You graphic artist, CorelDRAW 3.0. Okay, that's cool. Okay, that makes sense. It's kind of cool that the knowledge is transferable between these two things, right? It's really cool. So Krita is also trying to do a similar thing with Photoshop, right? So it tries to mimic Photoshop, so it's easier for Photoshop users to use Krita. So yes, include Tong-Sao in a stream. So yeah, there you are. You are in the stream. Is that what you mean? Oh, I mean you invite somebody. I don't really do sort of like a calls on the stream. It's not my thing. Sorry, I'm a little asocial for this kind of stuff. So okay, what I want to do, I want to put this kind of thing in here, I suppose. So this is going to be 0 like that. And now we can essentially create different versions, right? So for instance, you can always just do this. Yeah. Oh, I spilled a little bit of a tea, but not too much. Just a second. Okay. Okay, let's not repeat that. At least try. Okay. We're gonna do it like that, and we're gonna do it like that. There we go. Almost. And this one is gonna be vertical. Yeah. So now we have this kind of thing. It's pretty cool. Maybe we can even have just this thing, just one single thing in here, and essentially, yeah, essentially just animate it procedurally, but I'm not sure if it's a good idea generally. Not sure if it's a good idea generally. So, what would be the best way to have several versions of this entire thing, right? So I think I'm gonna abandon this stuff. We may extend, maybe we can have like atlas, right? We can have an atlas of these things. Yeah, this is actually a cool idea, because then we'll be able to load a single atlas into the memory and cut it into the texture. I think, yeah, I think this is what quite a lot of games do. And not only games, I think web does that as well, right? So essentially in web, it is possible to just have a single image as an atlas, and then on a level of CSS, cut out a specific icon, right? I think it is a thing that web developers do, web designers and stuff like that. So just a single atlas, and on the CSS, you just cut out specific icon, and that kind of works, right? So we can do a similar thing in here. We can do a similar thing in here, so why not? Because I want to like keep a single stuff in here. So in terms of pixels, right, I would like to keep it maybe 380, right? So that's basically the thing. And now, this is, I want to do pixels, right? 380. Okay, that's cool. So now, can I multiply width by 2? Okay, so I remember that you can put like expressions in here and they get automatically evaluated. Okay, that's fine. So now I can essentially just put stuff like that. But that also raises a question. So now I want to have a version that has some of these things a little bit inside, like this. But I need to make it pixel perfect, if you know what I mean, right? So I wanted to make it pixel perfect. I could reduce it like that, but that changes the size of the width, right? That changes the size of the width. So one of the things I can do, I can say something like this. Does it? I think it doesn't really work that way. Yeah, so I don't like that it like really scales them. I don't like that it really scales them. One of the things we can do this sort of like a stroke style, right? And we can make it red and no, not this red, but the surrounding of this thing is red. So, and let's place this entire thing somewhere here, right? Let's place this thing somewhere here, and that way we can just make it smaller, right? We can just make it smaller. We can even try to make it like so. I'm trying to make it even, sort of speak, right? So maybe this is gonna be 35, 310, 310. So, and since I can snap individual things in here, I can snap them into this thing. I can literally snap it into this thing, and that way I think it's gonna be perfect. It's gonna be pixel perfect. So yeah. So I didn't have to scale any of these things, right? So I want to just move them and keep them pixel perfect. Right, so that's what I wanted to achieve. Okay. So, and now we can quite easily just duplicate this entire stuff, right? So document properties, we can multiply this stuff by 2, like so. Boom, we have a little bit more stuff in here now. So though we have to be a bit careful, right, because this thing needs to maintain its shape. So what if I group this thing, right, and I put it like that? It needs to be snapped here, please. Can you snap it here? Please, please snap it here. It doesn't want to. What the fuck? Right, to this angle. It doesn't snap it. God damn. All right. One of the things we can do, we can have. Oh, it's not even working perfectly anymore. Okay, so we can have the second one, which is, let's say, is green, and it's gonna be the size of 380, 380. All right. So that way, I can finally copy paste this entire stuff and move it here so it snaps like this, which makes it super easy. Okay, so right. I use extra shapes to guide me through all of that. Right, so that's essentially what I do. I can do it like that. HV, right, so this is HV, 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 and the same thing for these things. HV, 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 right. So, there we go. So, but I suppose we kind of need to swap these things. So this is going to be sort of like a regional thing. So I need to go to YouTube. Let me save everything in here. Let me just save it. And let's go to try Kotlin. So people don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing the icons. So if I extend it, you probably can't see what's going on. All right, so in here, so it actually is bigger and it's just like doing it like that. Okay, we'll see what we can do. So just doing animations. It's just doing animations. All right, so this one is, in terms of pixels, what is its size? 310, 380. Okay, 310 and 380. That's fine. I might as well maybe, yeah, keep it outside somewhere here. Keep it outside. Because I think it's going to be useful in the future. But for now, we can have this like atlas, out of which we're going to be cutting out things. All right. So let me open it like that. Okay, so then we can do convert background none full screen SVG, full screen PNG. All right, so there we go. So this is what we have in here. So I can now have the following thing. When I'm creating a texture, can I cut out the texture? I think I cannot. The first looks very YouTubey. Maybe it does. Like it's kind of inspired. It's kind of heavily inspired by YouTube. So that's for sure. I think we cut out during the drawing. Draw texture XC, or maybe draw texture professional. Okay, so here it is. So draw a part of the texture defined by a rectangle with the proper parameters, right? Whatever that means. So you provide the texture, you provide the source rectangle, and then the destination rectangle, and then you provide origin for rotation. We don't plan to rotate anything in the tint. So we'll probably have to do this kind of thing, right? So we'll probably have to do this kind of things. Okay, so this is the plugin. And let me see. So full screen image, should I call it like that? I think I'm going to preserve this kind of stuff. The only difference here is going to be how exactly we render this entire stuff. So that's basically what we render. So we can try, okay, we can try to just run it and see how laughable it looks like, right? So because it's not a square anymore, right? So it's a rectangle and it's a full atlas, but we don't need full atlas. I just want to see how how it looks like. I think it's gonna be funny. Right, so I'm gonna just start the Musializer. There we go. So let's put it in here. Yeah. I mean, not bad, I guess. Right, so it's the whole atlas there, right? That's so funny. Right, because it used to be like a single thing. Now it's like we have several of them. So that's fine. That's fine. Right. So let's go to the prop parameters. To the prop parameters. So we provide the texture. So that's the texture. So what's going to be the source? The source, I'm going to use Clickable for now. But maybe let's create source separately. Source. So first one is 380. We know exact dimensions of this thing, so we can just use that. In terms of the destination, this one is interesting because so this allows us to stretch things, but we don't really plan to stretch. So let's use destination as this. So this becomes a rectangle. This is the destination. So this is X and Y for the destination, and then we have to define width and height. And width and height is something like this. Right, width and height is something like this, but not really. So the actual width and height is gonna be 380, 380, and this is a full screen button. 380. So we kind of need to save icon size in here. It's a little bit of a magical number, but I'm gonna factor it out a little bit later somehow. Trust me, I'm gonna do that at some point. So, and we can maybe even use something like this, icon size. So we just pick that as an icon size, like the main icon size. Right, so origin doesn't really matter. I can just set collateral vector 2 0 rotation, but the tint is gonna be that, right? So we already have a tint. Yes. Okay, so we can just do that. So I wonder if I could factor out some of these things. Yes, factor out some of these things, and that's funny. Okay, so that's cool. So let's just try to, maybe I should have not actually closed it, right? Because we don't really need to reload anything anymore. Right. So we don't need to reload anything anymore. So what we need... so I see what's going on in here. So we have to replace this stuff with icon size. And icon size. All right. And okay, so that at least put it there. But now the scaling is kind of off, I think. So Do we still use width and height of some things that we're not supposed to use? I don't know why it is like half of this entire stuff, so maybe I have to do something like this. Yeah, so something is fishy. That is for sure. That is for sure. So we are adjusting icon size to this specific scale. Oh, okay, so I see. Yeah, that's actually true. That's actually true. That makes so much sense. There we go. Look at that. That looks so much better, actually. I like how it looks like. Okay. So now, what I'd like to have, I'd like to have some sort of a parameter that lets us pick the icon. In fact, how we can pick an icon, right? So this is the icon 0, right? So we can even have this as an index, right? So, and I'm gonna just say size index 0. Yep. And I'm gonna essentially refresh. So now I can modify that index. I modify that specific index and say 1. All right. And there we go. It's the next one. You can probably see that. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. It's the next one. Then 2. Right, refresh. And this is next one. So essentially, we now have indices, right? So now we have indices, and we can actually accept that specific index as a parameter of the whole thing, right? So size icon index, right? So index icon index. So this is a sprite sheet. Yeah, this is essentially a sprite sheet. So, and in here, when you are in full screen, you probably want to see the index too. Right, and when you are not in a full screen, you probably want to see the index 0, right? So we have intermediate indices, but we didn't find the usage for them yet, right? So now look at that chat. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. So yeah, and to be fair. I kind of want, when I hover, I want to use index 1. And when, like I hover here, I want to use index 3, right? So essentially, I think it should not be really an index per se. It should be some sort of like enumeration, maybe even Boolean, right? So full screen button, right? So essentially, are we full screen or not? So how should I call that parameter? Full screen or not full screen? To be fair, we can get that information from the from this thing directly, but I don't really want to do that. Enable, nah. So essentially, yeah, how do you call this thing? So I'm not really sure. Is full screen? Nah. Toggle on, toggle off, toggle on. It's kind of a difficult one. It is in fact a kind of a difficult one, so I'll have to think. Since we haven't access directly to the plugin, maybe it doesn't really matter that much. Because we can always sort of like pick. Yeah, for example, here we know whether there is a hover over or not. Right, so we can work with that. So Boolean hover over, so by default is going to be false. And then if we are inside, hover over is going to be true, otherwise false. And the color basically depends. Hover over and just use that color in here. Otherwise, use the background color. Right, so that makes it relatively easy to work like this. Okay. And yeah, essentially, we can split in here. We can do the split. If you are, P is full screen, right? If you are in full screen, and if you are not in full screen, if you are in hover over, and if you are not in hover over, so something like this. So there's 4 situations. If you are in full screen right now and you are in hover over, to be fair, it would be nice to invert that. So we're not in full screen and right now is not hover over. So that means icon index is gonna be 0, right? It's gonna be 0. If it's hover over, it's gonna be 1. So if it's full screen and not hover over, it's gonna be 2 and then 3. So maybe, so this is binary counting, right? So this is essentially binary counting. Maybe we can make bits of that index out of these flags, but that's gonna be unreadable, I think. We could make index out of these bits because it's only 4 states, but this is more explicit, I think. I think this is more explicit, and here we can have icon index, right? So icon index, and let's not accept that as a parameter now. All right, so what do we have in here? So yeah, we do not accept that. All right. I think it's still kind of, I feel like it still changes the width, but it actually doesn't. Right. So is it good? Is it good? Is it Gucci? Is it Tamaguchi? So yeah. So maybe this should expand, and this should yeah. So I think we need to swap these two things. We really need to swap them. Right. So what I want to do in here, it is take this entire stuff, then this entire stuff. I can even group them. And then this entire stuff, put it in here. Something like this. So that's what I want to do. Then I'm going to go into the resources, icons, and convert. Super quick. So let's close Musializer. Of course, just in case we want to rebuild the entire thing. And right, so yeah, in full screen it goes like this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And if you idle for long enough when you are in full screen, it will disappear. Yeah, it disappears and you can't press it anymore until you actually move a little bit. So that's pretty cool. So you may argue that maybe it actually expands too much. I feel like it expands, but maybe not too much actually. Wasn't easier to change the index number instead of editing the image? Not really. As I already said, what I want you to do, one of the things I want you to do, I want you to construct the index out of the bits of this entire stuff. Right, so let me demonstrate you what I want you to do. So this is 1, 0. So this is the lowest bit, and this is the highest bit. So essentially what we can do, we can take this, then this, right, and then move it to 1, right, move by 1 bit and there, and then do something like this and remove this entire stuff. Right, so that's what we could have done, but I think it's too unreadable. It didn't really work the way I expected, so maybe let's actually swap the bits. So I think it has to be maybe P full, screen and then hover over, something like this. So that's what I wanted kind of to do. Yeah. So, and if you are changing the indices, it's kind of difficult to pull off that trick. I really don't want to do this because it's too smart ass. You know what I mean? It's too smart ass. Like somebody's going to be reading this and it's like, what the fuck is this? How am I supposed to understand that? Right. So it's kind of cool, right? It boosts your ego, but at the same time, like, so yeah. I'm kind of want to leave it as it is, right? It's kind of copy pasty, but at the same time, it's extremely explicit. It's extremely explicit. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it as it is. All right. So and yeah, I forgot to create the index icon index. There we go. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah, an actual legit button for going full screen, and it feels like a proper button, right? So it acts like in modern UI, it disappears and stuff like that. Right, maybe we can make this thing disappear a little bit more pretty, in the sense that like a fade away, right? So we could try to do that, but I mean, that's already streaming for more than 2 hours, right? So I'm already streaming for more than 2 hours, and I think the time has come to wrap it up, right? So the time has come to wrap it up. I'm gonna quickly just you know, commit everything that we have in here. To be fair, like I'm gonna commit the final rendered resource, but maybe it would make sense to actually include that in a build tool. So we have like a logo, a thing that builds a logo out of the SVG. So maybe it would make sense to add the command in here. Right, so here we are, yeah, we're just building several things. Not sure how good of an idea that is. All right, I'm gonna extend the build a little bit later. So for now, I'm gonna just like commit add full screen button. Right, so we added the full screen button. There we go. The feature has been implemented. Right, and yeah, 2 hours. 2 hours. You may say that you can implement that faster in React, but can you implement that as fast as I did while entertaining hundreds of people on Twitch and constantly talking and explaining everything and also drawing the icons yourself? Can you implement that in 2 hours doing the same thing, but in React? You can say that you can do that in React faster, but you're going to be sitting at your home, nobody's going to be watching you, nobody's going to be distracting you, nobody's going to be trolling you, you won't have to explain anything to anybody, but I have to do all that stuff. And it took me 2 hours to implement this, I think. So yeah. Anyways, I guess that's it for today. Thanks everyone who's watching right now. I really appreciate that. Have a good one, and I see you all on the next recreational programming session with Azuzin. Love you all.